So, why are we still open when so many churches have closed? Well, first, let me make sure I remind everyone we're not open in rebellion of some government order. The government order to shut down all the businesses and social distancing and all those things specifically exempts churches and religious organizations, at least here in Ohio it does. So we don't have to decide whether we would obey it or not, since it doesn't apply. We don't have to cross that bridge right now. But so why are we here? Are we just in rebellion? Are we just trying to blow off all the concerns? Or are we? Well, not at all. I realize a lot of churches have closed, have chosen not to hold services. I hope they're not closed, but have chosen not to hold services because of this threat of coronavirus. So why are we still here at City of God? Are we just some rule breakers? And so I think I should probably address that. I don't want anyone to be offended. I don't want to criticize the churches that have remained or have chosen to close. In some states, they've actually made those orders apply to the churches. My heart is with those pastors who are having to choose. There's some pastors who have defied state orders to close and who are under threat of government punishment or oppression or consequence or peril of some sort but I believe that in these times, and this is my personal belief, that the church, that is the body of Christian believers, must be strong and must be available. We talk about this faith. It's easy to talk about faith. It's easy to talk about, how there's a song that says, don't claim to, walk on water until you step out of the boat. It's easy to have faith when there's no problems. It's easy to have faith when there's no threat. It's easy to talk about believing God will protect us and heal us and etc. until there's a real threat. And then do the Christians really look any different than the rest of the world? I believe we should. I believe that in these times, it's important that each and every one of us examine ourselves. Is Christ in us? And what does that look like if he is? I was watching an interview on the news of these people talking about their loved one passing away in a hospital room alone because no one could go in or would go in because he had coronavirus and he was alone and no one was there to take his hand. And I thought, my God, how horrible that is. If anyone from this church is sick, you call and let me know. I'll come and pray with you. My God. I can't imagine people, especially people that don't know Jesus, on their deathbeds, and Christians are more afraid of getting sick than they are of seeing that loved one go to hell without knowing Jesus. These are my personal convictions. So, of course, we're being wise. We've got plenty of hand sanitizer. Look, I have some here on the pulpit instead of the normal anointing oil. Oh, no, not instead of. It's here too. But we have some hand sanitizer there in the back, and we have people sanitizing all of the surfaces and all of that before and after church. And we're going to be as wise as we can. And the families that come in are, usually generally sitting by their cells, separating, and we're doing all of that. But we're here to worship the Lord because he is worthy. He is worthy of our worship. He is worthy of honor and glory and blessing and power. He is worthy. He's worthy of coming out. He's worthy of exalting him and praising him and loving him. And I want to tell you, I'm looking to him for my salvation. I'm looking to him for my protection. He is my security. He is my physician. He is my counselor. He's my all in all. He's my everything. He's my rock and my fortress. It's in him that I trust. He's my defense. I will not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day. I will not be afraid of the pestilence that walks in darkness. 1,000 may fall at my side and 10,000 at my right hand, another however many in China and however many in this place and down the street, but it shall not come nigh thee, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee. I believe these things, and no, I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant or prideful, but the Lord is worthy of our worship. And he is also our best defense in time of trouble. He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So I'm not going to run in some other secret place in time of trouble. I want to run to the church. I want to run to the people of God. I want to run to the people of faith. I want to run to God in times of trouble. Christians should be different. Well, these are just some of my convictions. I think that while I have these convictions, it's important that we be respectful of those who may believe differently. I've had others tell me, well, yeah, but that's just being unwise. Well, if you believe that, then you probably should stay home. But we're also streaming this on Facebook Live, so do tune in. Do tune in and let me pray for you, and I bless you in the name of Jesus. I pray over every family in every house that can't be here today or isn't able to be here today, whether through personal conviction or fear or government order or personal belief, or maybe they just had a flat tire. I pray for you. I bless you in the name of the Lord. We're not here to cast stones. But the just shall walk by faith. The just shall live by faith. It's very important that we live by the faith that we believe. So that's why we're here today. We're not here to cast stones at anyone else. We're not here to, be flippant. We're not here because we don't take the threat seriously. We're not here for any of those reasons. We're not here for any reason that has anything to do with man of any kind. We're here because we believe in a living God. He is real. And we're not going to let the threat of some virus or anything else, because there are people and they need to see. There are people that don't know Jesus, and they're watching the church. They're watching the church. Hopefully I'll talk about that more. What will they see? I remember 15 or 20 years ago, it's about 20 years ago, I remember I went to minister to a patient who had AIDS. She was on her deathbed, or so they thought. Literally, she was very close to death. And that is an immune system thing, so it breaks down on one's immune system, and they have all of these the other illnesses and diseases can come on them. And so they believed that she had contracted tuberculosis or something like that. And I remember I went to visit this woman, and they had put her in an isolation room, special room there at Community Hospital. They've torn that down now, but it's instead of a regular room, with a door and with curtains, it had these glass windows, and it had this sliding glass door and special air units, so none of the air can get out of that room to any of the other places in the hospital. And everybody, before they went in, had to put on these special things. They had a little hoodie and the gloves and all these things to make sure we don't breathe any of the air or touch them. And they warned me, as a minister, I could go in. No one else was allowed, but as a minister, I was allowed to go in. And they warned me, don't touch. And it's one of my first experiences with anything like that. And I went into that room, and I'll never forget it, because as I approached the bed, and I wasn't a pastor then, by the way. I wasn't a pastor. I held no title at my church at all as far as on the staff. I was an usher, a doorkeeper. Better to be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord than to dwell in the tents of the wicked, by the way. That's all. I shook people's hands at church sometimes, just like y'all. no different. So I wasn't there because I was some great pastor, but because I came to pray and I carried a Bible, they did let me in. And as I approached her bed, though, I looked in her eyes and I saw a woman afraid, beyond afraid, terrified. Her body had withered up. She was down to, she literally couldn't get out of her bed. It was just bones. Her fingers had curled up and she looked horrible, but the fear on her face was terrible. And at that moment, I remembered reading in the Bible where a leper approached Jesus. And it said Jesus touched him and healed him. And I looked in this woman's eyes, and you know what? I thought she needed touched. I reached out and took her hand, and I prayed with her. I began to speak. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was exactly what I believe Jesus wanted me to say at that time. And I spent some time with her, and I'd like to tell you that she got healed and she's still alive today, but that's not what happened. But she did get healed in a way, and she is still alive today. Because that woman was in terror and in fear and on her way to a place unknown. And a couple days later, the tuberculosis threat or whatever there was, it went away. That particular thing got better, and she got a little bit of strength back, and she was in her hospital room. And she was allowed to have visitors, and they didn't have to have the glass doors and the masks and the gloves anymore. And she was actually able to eat a little bit. They thought she was going to die that day, the day I prayed with her, but she didn't. And I went and visited her again, and she was sitting up in bed. And I looked in her eyes, and I want to tell you, I didn't see any fear at all. She actually smiled. She raised her hand, and she said, "I'm not afraid anymore." She said, "I'm not afraid anymore at all." She said, "I'd like to go on living here, but if I don't, it's okay. I know where I'm going." She said, "I was terrified the other day. I didn't know. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was going to happen." But she said, "It's okay now. I know him." And so she is alive today. It was a couple weeks after that she went on to be with Jesus. But the point to all that is, in the midst of that trial and danger and crisis, the church, God wanted someone to go in and touch her with the word and the Spirit of God. And no matter how much threat there is in the world, the church has to remember our responsibility. We have to remember to act like Christians, even in the face of trials. That's my personal conviction. Does that mean nothing bad will ever happen to us if we do? Well, the Bible says in Daniel that sometimes some of the Christians will be overcome, even in the middle of doing those things. So we do them anyway. That's my personal conviction. I'm not standing up here telling you that I'm Superman and there's no kryptonite in the world. I'm telling you that even if there is some kryptonite, I'm a Christian. And I want to act like one. Now, I'll talk a little bit more as we go about that. So the title of today's message is Understanding the Times. Understanding the Times. Some crazy times that we're living in right now. There are a lot of things going on in the world. A lot of amazing things. This coronavirus has taken over the news of all the things happening in the world. And I want to tell you, this coronavirus is not the only thing happening in the world. And it may not be the most significant thing happening in the world. There's this game kids play sometimes where, a teenager will say, there's a couple of them together and one of them will say, "Look." And when the boy looks, the one here smacks him in the back of the head, and it's funny and everybody laughs and all. But, when the whole world's saying, "Look," you better be careful because the devil might be getting ready to smack you in the back of the head. I wonder what they're trying to keep me from seeing. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you. There are a lot of things going on in the world. Some of them we see on the news and some of them we don't. Some of them we see on the news and some of them we see on the Word. So let's look to the Word before we look to CNN and then look to CNN. I'm not saying we should be like ostriches with our heads stuck in the sand, Goodness, Christians should be informed. Christians should understand the times. That's what I want to talk about, is understanding the times. Well, there is a lot going on right now. Some of the facts, as of yesterday, I read that the coronavirus infections, this CV-19, has reached 663,000 worldwide. 663,000, I'm sure it's more today, 663,000 people now in the world have been diagnosed with coronavirus, including over 120,000 here in the United States. 81,000 in China. I was shocked by these numbers that the United States in just 3 weeks, and with 1/4 of the population of China, has now has more people who've contracted this than all of the people in China, with 1.5 billion people, have contracted in 3 months. That seems very strange to me, but those are the numbers. Those are the numbers that they're reporting. Total deaths from this disease have now reached 30,000. 30,000 people worldwide have contracted coronavirus. This actually, coronavirus, by the way, understanding the times we're talking about, so we should get our facts straight. Coronavirus is not a new thing. It's been around for many, many, many years, longer than I am aware of. Decades, maybe centuries. It's been around for a long time. But there are different strains of the coronavirus, different versions, different flavors, if you will. And so this is a new flavor. This new flavor that just came out in December of 2019. At the end of 2019, it started out in China. Some people got sick. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know what caused it. In fact, there were news reports there at the end of December that a group of people in this seaport town, whatever, in China, had gotten pneumonia. And the first news reports, they reported that they got pneumonia from eating some bad seafood. And then a couple weeks later, of course, the whole world realized that it's not some bad seafood, but it's something else. And they diagnosed and they determined that it's this CV-19, this particular strain of coronavirus. So coronavirus itself has been around for a long time, but we're just talking about this strain. So 660,000 people in the world have got it. And of those, 30,000 people have now died, including 2,200 people right here in the United States have died from coronavirus. 3,200 people died in China. 3,200 people, 3,000 people have died of coronavirus in China over this period of time. So it's probably very likely that the United States deaths will surpass China's deaths very, very quickly. Seems odd to me that in just a few weeks, barely a month, the United States will have more deaths in our 350 million population than China in 1.5 billion had in a couple of months, but those are the numbers. Now, of the 81,000 people who have contracted this coronavirus strain in China, and this is important to know also. We want to understand the facts. We want to understand what the facts are. It's a terrible thing that's happened in the world. It's a terrible thing that's happening, and it should have our attention, and it should concern every one of us. I was talking with my banker last week, though, and he asked me my thoughts on it, and I said, well, I'm very concerned about the coronavirus, but I'll tell you this, I'm a whole lot more afraid of the government's response to coronavirus than I am of the virus. I'll get on to that in a minute. So I'm concerned about it. I don't take it lightly. But let's consider this. In China, this is what the CDC, these numbers are from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control. 81,000 people in China have contracted this disease. Of those, 75,000 have already recovered, fully recovered. China has only 3,100 active cases right now in their population of 1.5 billion. So we want to be aware of the facts while all the hype is going on and while we're scared. We want to be aware of the facts. It's not Ebola. It's not the Black Plague. Be concerned. Understand the facts, but don't panic. Like I said last week, we don't have to rush to the supermarkets and empty all their shelves and buy up all of the toilet paper and hamburger. And it's not the end of the world. This isn't zombie apocalypse. It's none of that. It is a real concern that has come into the world. But most of the people will recover. Most of the people will get better. Young people practically aren't fazed. It's very, very, very similar to the flu. So it appears that China, for the most part, has gotten this under control. Yet in response to this pandemic, this quote, so-called pandemic, in response to this, governments around the world have ordered commerce, education, and industry to nearly a halt, to nearly a complete standstill. Governments have spent unprecedented amounts, or at least committed to spend unprecedented amounts of money in order to prop up their economies. Here in the United States, over $3 trillion have been committed. Just in federal spending, $3 trillion have been committed to subsidizing the economy and the individual peoples. That works out to more than $15,000 for every adult in the United States. Every single man and woman in the United States would have to come up with $15,000 just to pay back what they're spending on this. And that doesn't count state spending, and that doesn't count the quantitative easing that the Federal Reserve is doing. And that's just here in the United States. Now, this is not money that they actually have, friends. This is money that they're printing from out of nowhere or borrowing. It's money that somebody's going to have to pay back from somewhere, from something. There is no such reality as something for nothing. So, and then there are some questions. Will that be enough? Will that be enough to avert the economic collapse? Will all of this spending and stuff, will it be enough to keep the economies of the major powers of the world from collapsing and going into another Great Depression or worse? Or will it cause such a thing? You know, you can only build your house of cards so high, but that's for people smarter than me to debate. And what will be next? Friends, what happens next? Why, there was another event like this 10 years ago, not like this, but an economic thing that required a lot of spending just about 10 years ago. And we thought that was the most that we had ever, seen in these kinds of numbers. And people have panicked. People across the nation and around the world have panicked into hoarding supplies, all kinds of supplies and weapons, piling up their weapons, piling up their ammunition, stockpiling their dry foods and dry goods and paper supplies and stuff so that they can get ready for the apocalypse, I suppose. The only reason that we have such shortages of supplies right now is because of people hoarding them. It isn't that people have stopped manufacturing the necessities. In fact, all of the companies and industries that manufacture any of the things that are essential for people's lives to continue normally are exempted from all of the shutdown orders. And so far as I know, all of those people are not only continuing to produce, but they're looking to hire people. I read that Kroger was trying to hire 10,000 more people to meet the demands of all of the hoarders, all of the people who are trying to panic into this. Now, my personal conviction is that's a little much. Folks, this is not the end of the world. This is not the zombie apocalypse. This is not, but it's coming. Some of those things. So be wise, but don't panic. Understand the times. Be wise. Understand the facts, but don't panic. It may not be popular for me to point some of these things out, but there's there are a few things that I'd like to point out to you. There are worse things that could happen. In fact, there are worse things that have happened if you look back over the last couple hundred years of history. And there are very worse things that will happen if you look into the Word and you believe it. There are far worse things that will happen. So keep everything in perspective. Speaking of perspective, let me point this out to you. Although a disease that has infected over 100,000 people and killed 2,000 people in our country should be taken seriously, like I said, it's not Ebola, it's not smallpox, it's not the Black Plague. In many ways, it can be compared to the flu. Are you aware that although over 100,000 people have contracted CV-19 in the United States, according to the Center for Disease Control, according to the CDC, as many as 54 million people have contracted the flu in this same season, this flu season. That's not over the last 10 years, that's this season, this flu season. The CDC estimates that there have been as many as 62,000 United States deaths from flu this flu season compared to the 2,000 coronavirus deaths. But we didn't halt the country because of the flu. Now, if someone has the flu, we generally don't give them a kiss. You know, I love my wife, but she had the flu here a few weeks back, and she said, "Don't kiss me, honey. Don't kiss me." And guess what? We live in the same house, and I didn't get the flu. Didn't get any sugar either. But for a couple weeks, it's okay. Be wise. 62,000 people have died this flu season from the flu. In the United States alone. Worldwide, these numbers are much, much higher. The World Health Organization estimates as many as 500,000 people have died in the world this flu season from the flu. 500,000 compared to the 30,000 we're talking about who've died from CV-19. The reason I'm pointing this out is because the CV-19 symptoms are said to be very much like the flu. Most people who catch it do get better. The example I gave in China, 92% of the cases in China, the people have gotten better and are completely recovered now. And for them, it's over, or at least the health part of it's over. They may be paying for the economic part of it for decades. They may be dealing with the financial fallout, with the lifestyle fallout. The lifestyle fallout, my goodness, with the reaction to this. Like I said, I'm much more afraid of the government's reaction than I am of the threat itself. So the flu is very serious also, but we haven't reacted the same. So why? Why the hype over this? Now I know there are a lot of reasons for it. This is at the beginning, and for a lot of reasons, for in many ways, it's still unknown. There are so many unknowns, and whenever there's something unknown, people get afraid, and sometimes people make mistakes in the fear, in the face of the unknown. Sometimes we overreact. Folks, there's always going to be unknowns, but we have one great known: know the Lord. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Do you know him? We should know him. He said, "I am the Lord, I change not." And there's so many possibilities now. Why is all of this hype? What's really going on? Now, folks, I'll tell you the truth. I don't have all the answers. I really don't. I don't know everything that's going on. I don't have all of the answers. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not the NSA. I don't have listening devices in all of the government offices. So imagine that. I know someone who does. I know someone who knows your thoughts from afar off, even before you think them. And I can trust him. So I don't know all the answers myself, but I do know this. I know that what we're being told on TV is not the whole truth. I know that we're not being given all of the answers. I know that there are other agendas and there are other things happening. There are things that are being slipped in. I believe that one of the most likely long-term consequences from this will be one more nail in the coffin for cash transactions. This social distancing thing is paving the way for events that have to happen in order for the Antichrist system that we read about in the Bible to fully take effect. And in order for people to buy into that, they've got to be afraid of something. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I know there are some hidden agendas. I don't know what they are. I know there are spiritual powers at work in times such as this, times that we are in. If we understand the times, then we must understand that there are things that Jesus told us would come to pass. He said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Paul wrote, not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood, and the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. We got to look to the Lord in all of this. Look to the Word. We should understand the times. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 29 through 32. The author is talking about when David, when he became king, and they were transferring the kingdom from the house of Saul to the house of David. And a lot of things had to happen. He had to bring together his army, but he had to bring together the people, and it was a great time of transition. And the author is listing of each tribe of Israel, the people that came forth, of the sons of Benjamin, relatives of Saul. 3,000 came until the greatest part of them had remained loyal. Until then, the greatest part of them had remained loyal to the house of Saul, it says. Of the sons of Ephraim, 20,800, mighty men of valor, famous men throughout their father's house. Of the half-tribe of Manasseh, 18,000, who were designated by name to come and make David king. And verse 32, of the sons of Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, there were men of understanding, who had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do. Their chiefs were 200, and all their brethren were at their command. So in the middle of this description of these genealogies and this description of what happened and all the thousands and tens of thousands who came, the author mentions these 200 men of the tribe of Issachar, who had understanding of the times. Everyone was under their commands because they had understanding of the times, they knew what Israel ought to do. They knew what Israel ought to do at that time, recounting these times. The Bible lists all these numbers, but of these, there were tens of thousands of the other tribes, but of these 200, just a few men of understanding can make such a tremendous difference in the world. Christians should be those people. We need more people today who have understanding of the times that we are in today. Relatively few. Just a few of understanding can make so much difference. The leaders in the times of Jesus lacked that understanding. They didn't understand the times that they were in. Jesus wept over Jerusalem as he was making the triumphal entry there. He stopped and he looked at the city and he wept and wept over the people because they did not understand the times. They misinterpreted. They saw the facts. We need to understand the facts. We need to be aware of the facts, but we need to understand them in light of the times that we're in. We need to know. That's what I believe. This is my personal conviction. Luke chapter 19 says, Jesus looked over Jerusalem and he said, for the days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you and surround you and close you in on every side and level you and your children within you to the ground, and they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time. You did not know the time of your visitation. Daniel, the great prophet Daniel, also had understanding of the times that he was in. He understood. He wrote in Daniel chapter 9, verse 1 through 3, in the year of Darius, the son of Zeus, of the lineage of the Medes, who was king over the realm of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood. He said, I, Daniel, understood by the books. He's talking about the Bible. He's talking about the book of Jeremiah, the words that were written before him. I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years specified by the word of the Lord through Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Then I set my face toward the Lord to make request by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. So Daniel understood from the book of Jeremiah that there was a certain time at hand. Now this is very significant because this same Daniel had been in Babylon for 70 years. This Jeremiah that he talked about, they told all of the people when the Babylonians captured Jerusalem, they told them to go ahead, to go to Babylon, to go and to pray for the good of Babylon because its good is your good, because you're going to be there for a long time. You're going to be there for 70 years. Go ahead, submit to the, to this. Settle in, plant vineyards, buy properties, build houses there. You're going to be there. Because they understood the time. They understood that that was the time they were in. But now 70 years later, because Daniel understood the times, he says, I understood the time. So now he's preaching exactly the opposite. Now he's doing exactly something different. He's saying, get ready to leave these homes in Babylon. We're going to our real home. We're going to Jerusalem. We're going somewhere else now. So now the same Daniel, 70 years later, is telling people the time is at hand. They've read about it for years and decades, but now the time is at hand. It's time to prepare to leave Babylon. It's time to prepare to leave. It's time to return to Jerusalem. Now, instead of praying for the well-being of Babylon, they began to pray to leave it behind. Now he sets his face toward the Lord and he remembers these things in prayer and he asks the Lord to restore Jerusalem. He wasn't saying that 20 years before because he understood the times. And like the people of Issachar, his interpretation of the facts at hand was accomplished through his understanding of the times. We are in the end times. We should understand the times that we're in. We are in what many people refer to as the end times, the last days. We're in the final chapters. That's my personal conviction. And I would love to spend more time than I have here in the next 10 or 15 minutes to go through all the many reasons of my understanding of the scriptures, why I believe that. It is in these times. I believe that. I believe that there is so much evidence for it. It is overwhelming. I've sat down with many an atheist who they start out the conversation filled with pride and argument, and by the end they're scratching their head and rubbing their chin saying, something to think about. Can take the spirit out of them. If they just understand the times, the history, the evidence. We should understand many of the events that are happening right now in the world. We should understand those events in the light of Bible prophecy. Some things look very different when you turn the light on. I can remember that from my drinking days. I better stop there. But some things look so different the next day. I bought a car once. I bought a 1970-something Buick Skylark. I'll never forget that. I bought it at night. I was in a hurry because I wanted my other car. I had a car that broke down, and I was just going to buy a car right now. I had cash, and they had the trading post. That was back before we had what's that we use now? We use Marketplace. What's the other one? Craigslist, yeah, thank you. Crabs and brain lock there. Yeah, Craigslist and Marketplace and eBay and all those things now. But back then we had this thing called the Trading Post, and I was pretty good at that. I prided myself. I could go through the used car market. And how many of you remember the Trading Post? At least a couple of us. Yeah, I could go through there and I'd pick out the numbers in the right, in the wealthier areas because those people, they just let go of their cars cheaper, sometimes and get a better car. And I knew the prefixes on the phone numbers. Well, I had some cash, and I was just going to buy a car, and I'm going to buy it right now because I plan on leaving this weekend. I bought me a 19-something Buick Skylark, red one, little 4-speed. I was just going to buy it for the winter. I had my Corvette in the shop, and I just wanted a winter car, and I didn't care if it had to last a long time or something, so I'm going to buy it cheap. Well, I'll tell you what, I bought that car at night, and the next day, I had regret. I come out and it looked like a different car in my driveway. Why didn't I see this? How could I miss that and that and that and that? That car didn't last me 2 weeks. I'm telling the truth. But things can look different in the light. And the facts around us, if we'll turn on the light, the Word is light. His Word is a light unto my feet. It's a lamp to my path. His Word will lighten things and can make them look a whole lot different. We're in those end times. And if we understand this, it should cause every Christian to read the Bible more and understand the times for yourself. You can. The Bible is of no private interpretation. All of the sermons that I've ever preached are just like headlines in a newspaper. It's not, you can't get your whole theology from your Sunday morning church services. You can't get your whole understanding of God. I truly feel sorry for any Christian who gets their whole understanding of their relationship with God from me. I'm not it. And neither is any other preacher or pastor or prophet. We're to point you to, like a headline points you to the real story. Jesus is the real story. The Word of God is the real story. If I do my job right, I can inspire someone or shake somebody up to want to learn. But as Christians, we need to get in the book for ourselves, and you can. If you just read 3 chapters a day, you'll get through the Bible in a year. Every fact that comes to me, every single fact, I don't pick up the newspaper anymore. I just say I do. I pick up the computer screen. I don't pick it up, but I look on the computer screen and I read the news, and every single fact that comes into my brain has to pass through the filter of my knowledge of the Word. That's why when Donald Trump was running for president, at first I thought it was a joke. I thought, there's no way that'll happen. But then suddenly there were a few things that happened that passed through my filter of Bible. And I said, this is fulfilling that. This is fulfilling that. This will happen. It will absolutely. Those of you that know me, I began to say, this is absolutely what's going to happen. Yeah, he's going to win. And because there are so many things that have to happen in order to fulfill the book of Revelation, the things that will happen. The relationship with Russia is changing. It's fulfilling Scripture in so many ways. It's because we look at it in light of, we interpret our facts based on the times, our understanding of the times that we're in. Now, although we are in the end times, I want to say this, folks, we are not in the tribulation. There's this thing called the tribulation. The tribulation, these last years of planet Earth before Jesus comes back and restores all things, before Jesus comes back and reigns on the earth and does away with evil. It's going to be a time of terror, a time of trouble that the earth has never seen. We're not in that time right now. This is not that. People call me, Pastor Bill, is this the end of the world? You've talked about the tribulation. One of the reasons a lot of people are asking me that, because they remember I've told them, I've been saying this for years, folks, this rapture thing that people believe is going to happen to take all of the Christians off the earth before the tribulation happens is not in the Bible. I don't want anybody to fall out of your chair, but it's not in the Bible. There will be Christians on the earth during these times of tribulation. And I've been saying that for years, and we need to understand the times. And if you'll get to the Bible yourself, instead of just believing the hype, instead of just listening to the headlines, instead of just listening to the media and the Hollywood movies, it's very easy to understand and see. So we need to understand that. So a lot of people call because they've heard me say that. They say, is this it then? And I say, no, this isn't it. This isn't that. Because we understand the times. But it should get our attention. It should really get our attention. The Bible speaks of a number of events happening, of economic turmoil and famine and plagues. Let me just read a couple of excerpts. I'm going to try to be done on time today. Let me read a couple of excerpts from the book of Revelation, chapter 6. Things that John saw, referring to during these times of tribulation. When he, chapter 6, verse 7, when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, come and see. So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Many people read that and believe that during this period of time, as many as a fourth of the people on earth could die. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed. So during this time of tribulation on the earth, the people in heaven, the people who have already gone before, are actually praising God. And they're actually saying, yes. They're saying, how long, Lord? They're saying, because they understand that though it's going to be a time, though weeping may endure for the night, there's some joy coming in the morning. We know how the story ends. Jesus comes back and we rule and reign with him forever. Revelation 8, let me skip a couple chapters. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees was burned up, and all of the green grass was burned up. Aren't scientists talking about stuff like that? This isn't that, but it's interesting. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of the water. The name of the star is Wormwood, and a third of the waters, 1/3 of all the water became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter, made poison. Let me skip on down. Revelation 9, verse 20. I'm almost there. But the rest of mankind, verse 9, so after all these things, John is seeing, Jesus is showing him this vision of things that were to come. And as all of these plagues and trials and tribulations and wars and natural disasters and earthquakes and all of these things are being poured out on the earth, Revelation 9 says this, but the rest, verse 20, but the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues still did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, nor of their sorceries, or their sexual immorality, or of their thefts. So even during this time when all these things happen, instead of turning to God, men are turning to everything but God. Instead of realizing, oh my, if we had just known the word, if they had just known the word, they might have seen. Instead of realizing this is happening before our eyes, Peter says, and this is a shame, because Peter says in 2 Peter chapter 3, he said, since you can see all these things are going to be dissolved, what kind of life should you be living? And instead of saying, what kind of life should we be living, since all these things are going to be dissolved, so many people who are Christians are, it seems like saying, how can I stop these things and preserve what I've got going here? I'm going to be a prepper. I'm going to be a hoarder. I'm going to get some guns and weapons and kill anybody that comes to my house and tries to take it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. And I'm not trying to criticize everyone here, but what kind of life? What do I want to be doing when Jesus comes? He is coming and nobody's going to stop him. So what do I want to be doing when he comes? Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and deceive many. And you will hear of rumors and wars. Hold on, let me back up. Let me say this. This, what we're in right now, is not the tribulation. I just read about some of these plagues and such. We should take note of it. This is not the tribulation, but we should take note of it because the events that are happening right now are not the plagues mentioned in the Bible. They're not even close. Most people are getting over coronavirus. Most people will not get over those things. Most of the people are not going to do well and make it in those things. And so if your Christianity has been brought to a halt due to coronavirus, how are you going to make it then? Jeremiah said it this way, if you've run with the footmen and they've wearied you, how shall you contend with the horses? Jeremiah 12:5. Too many Christians don't take the end time prophecy seriously because they don't believe it applies to them. They don't even read it. I've had so many people say, I'm going to be raptured away before that ever happens. I don't have to worry about it. Show me that in the Bible, and I'll show you some things in the Bible. Christians will be on the earth during these times, and so we should be prepared. And that preparation must be according to the Word of God, according to the biblical understanding. This is a time, this is a prelude to those things that will come, I believe, in our lifetime. I'll tell you a sad thing. And I think that's why I believe the church has to be strong during these times. How are we going to prepare? We got to prepare by knowing Jesus. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have your cupboards full. I do. I got an extra freezer in my house. And my wife keeps it full, let me tell you. If you're hungry, you can come over. In fact, we're going to have a great big Easter dinner. Social distancing. You know what they did when the firstborn of every person in Egypt died? They got together lest the destroyer should touch them. They got together under the blood. My faith in Jesus. Why, I'll tell you what, if everybody in my neighborhood was sick with the Black Plague, I'd still open my doors on Easter and have people come in and eat if they wanted to. That's just my personal conviction. Now, don't be too shocked if Deborah's wearing a mask and rubber gloves and a ventilator. I'm just, all right. But it's a time when we can be a witness to the world. We're not in those days yet, but they're coming. How are we going to prepare? And I believe that we prepare by preparing our hearts. Yesterday, a couple of young men called me, young kids called me, and they wanted me to bring them some food. Kids that would normally have eaten here on Saturday night, our youth group, but we didn't open our gym last night. We didn't have it, so they called. And they asked me to bring them some food. And so I left the house. I don't know what time it was, maybe 10 o'clock or so. And I went and I picked up these boys and we drove over to McDonald's. And it was so disappointing because we couldn't get a tote of cookies to go with the food. They were out of cookies. I offered, they were completely out. I guess they were. And it was the strangest thing. They told me that they were told that they were not allowed. The true story, up on Dirt Road, they were not allowed to sell cookies after dark, after night because of the coronavirus. I said, wait a minute, you could sell them in the day, but not at night. That's what we're told. I offered them an extra 20 if we could have some cookies. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so as I was dropping these kids off, I said, I was dropping them off, and then I noticed a couple of other boys had come to their house, and I said, if I'd known they were here, I would have got them some food too. And the one boy said to me, he said, Pastor Bill, you're always trying to be so nice. And I said, well, I'm a Christian. Just to feed some hungry kids. And he said to me, Pastor Bill, most Christians aren't nice. Why would kids say that? Why would anybody say that? In the face of the threats in the world, why aren't Christians the nicest people on earth? How can people say most Christians aren't nice? Most Christians aren't nice. Why does somebody associate being nice and getting food with me and my character rather than the character of Jesus Christ and his church? Say, Pastor Bill is nice. Fact is, I'm not nice. Those of you that know me pretty well, no, I really have to man, that doesn't come from me. That comes from Jesus. It really bothered me. I woke up thinking about that. This kid's not a Christian. Are we mindful of that in these times of trials and threats with all of the things that are coming in the world? If there is all of these bad things coming, are there going to be any Christians left to say, we're not afraid because we love you? Not because there's not a threat. Of course there's a threat, but I love you. I'm going to go give you some food because I love you. Come to my house because I love you. And I want you to know Jesus in these times. Now, how I express that might be different than others, but every Christian should be looking first to Jesus. Am I making sense to anyone today, or am I just babbling? I hope I'm challenging someone to think, how are we going to meet these times? Matthew chapter 24, Jesus said, that really did bother me though. I'm sorry, it really did bother me when he said most Christians aren't nice. It would be okay if he said some Christians aren't nice. I know some Christians aren't nice. I'm not nice some days. Yeah, some of you know me. I can attest to that. I hear some amens out there. Stop. Oh, Lord. But see, we should associate that with my character, not the character of Christianity. It's a sad day. It's a really sad day. If people who aren't Christians, when they think of Christianity, don't first think of love. Are we only known by the things we're against? Well, anyway, many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginnings of sorrow. So Jesus said, we're going to see all. He was talking to his disciples, and he said, you're going to see all these things, but that's not the end. That's not the great tribulation yet. And by the way, he was talking to disciples saying, you're going to be here and you're going to see this. He goes on, they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. Now he's talking to Christians. He's talking to his disciples. They will deliver you up to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended and will betray one another and will hate one another. And many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold, but he who endures to the end, he who endures to the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. Let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those of you who are nursing babies in those days, and pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. So how will we prepare? Well, I'm going to close in like 3 minutes. I'm going to give me 3 minutes to finish this out. By faith, that's how we prepare. By faith. If you can't remember anything else that I say today, remember these two words, by faith, and remember these two, by love. Those are the characteristics that must define Christians, by faith and by love. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, by your love for one another. And the just shall live by his faith. These, like I said, are not the plagues of the end. But if we panic under the threat of COVID-19, how will we react to the real plagues when they come? If we retreat into panic and fear and worldliness, how will we be faithful unto death? If we are the salt that has lost its savor, what good are we? This is a time that Christians need to rise and shine. Rise and shine, Christians of the world. Rise and shine. Though darkness cover the earth and gross darkness to people, the Christians need to rise and shine. To me, that might look like giving some kids some food or having an Easter dinner. To you, it might look like preaching on the street corners. To someone else, it might look like going through your Rolodex or your phone contact list and calling every person you know and saying, are you praying in these times? You don't have to go out and shake hands with anybody, but what are you doing? Do something. Call some people that you haven't talked to in a while. Call them up. You can't get coronavirus over the phone, I'm pretty sure. Unless you're using somebody else's phone without hand sanitizing it. But call somebody up and say, I was just thinking about you, brother or sister. And you're sitting home from work because you can't go to work, so you got plenty of time. Are you spending it all playing Fortnite? Or are you playing solitaire on the computer? Or are you spending some of that time praying for your family and talking with them and using it as an opportunity? I don't know. It might look different from all of us, for some of us. But we can't be salt that's lost its savor. Jesus said, you're the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, what good is it? And that's a rhetorical question because he answers it for us. He says that after that, it's not good for anything but to be cast down and trampled under the foot of men. If Christians lose their Christianiness, if Christians lose their Christ-likedness, they're not good for anything. You might as well go back to the world. I hear of people dying alone and Christians not going in to pray with them and make sure that they know Jesus. And the church in so many places is afraid to be the church. Do we really understand the times? Things happening are setting the stage for this Antichrist system to come. When the disciples faced threats, they ministered to the people. They embraced the storm. They cast out devils. They refused to be silent. When they were told they couldn't preach on the street anymore, they said, we ought rather to obey God than men. Don't be too quick, folks, to believe everything the TV tells you either. Don't fail to live by your faith, even if you do believe that there's a real threat in the world. What are you doing to witness? That's what I want to close on this thought. What are you doing to be a witness in this time? What are we doing to shine for Jesus? To bring light into this darkness, into this dark world. There's a lot of people that are on their way to hell, and this might be the wake-up call. This might be the time when they'll listen to you when they wouldn't have listened to you before. There may be a time when Christians should withdraw, by the way. There may be a time when Christians should withdraw from the world and go into hiding and close their doors and not go out anymore and not subject themselves to that time may come, but it's not now. This is the time to arise and shine. How do I know that time may come, and how do I know that it's not now? If you was reading what I read, if you were paying attention in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the Daniel of the prophet, then, that's the time. He said, then you got stuff in your house, don't even go back to get it. He told the Christians that then they should leave, then they should go into hiding, go into the wilderness, what have you. So there may come a time but that time is when the Antichrist is revealed. In fact, Paul said in 2 Thessalonians, so many people are talking about this rapture thing. Paul said in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that can't happen until first the son of perdition is revealed. Until this thing that Daniel wrote about, it has to happen first before the second coming of Christ. And when that happens, until the Antichrist is revealed and goes into the place of God and sits down in the place of God and declares to himself that he is God and all of that, until that happens, Christians are supposed to arise and shine. We're not supposed to withdraw from the world. We're supposed to embrace the world, even though the world may hate you and criticize you and mock you. Understand the times. And even then, those who know their God, Daniel said, will be strong and do great exploits. Those who know their God. Even then, Daniel chapter 11, verse 32 says, those who do know their God will be strong and do exploits during those times. I want to be one of those people. Now, it's easy for me to talk. I don't really believe the threat's as bad as some people say. I was telling Deborah last night, it's easy for me to talk like this now. I hope I'll do as well then. But by faith, I trust that I will. How about you? I want to close with this question. How are you living? How are we living by our faith in these times? If we understand the times, how can we live by our faith? How is our faith reaching the world around us, our neighbors, our friends, our family, our loved ones? The answer might be different for all of us. You know, some people in my family, I can't call up and say this and this about Jesus because it would offend and cause an argument rather than a help, but I can pray for them. But some people I can. We can discern the difference. Well, God bless you. I'm going to close on that. If anybody wants to talk more about these things, by the way, our gym is closed for the kids. You know, we normally open every day after school from 4 to 8 for kids to play basketball and get a free meal. Our gym is closed, but we're open. I'm here. We're here for ministry. We're available for pastoral care. And if someone's sick and can't come here, call. Send a message on Facebook. Get a hold of us. Call Deborah. We'll come. We care. We really care. And God is able. He is able. So we're here every day. We're serving a free meal still to kids every day. We might be doing some takeout, if the cafeteria was to get crowded. But we're here. The food's available. We still have toilet paper. We still have paper towels. You know, when we heard that the toilet paper and the paper towel supply chain had its problems or whatever, we began giving it away free. Put an ad on Facebook. I don't know how many rolls we gave away, but we still have some. If someone, we don't have the manpower. We don't have the manpower to have someone here for those set hours, because we had 2 hours a day we were dedicated to being available for that. So, but if you need some, call or send a message. We still have plenty. We just don't have enough demand and manpower to set it up every day right now for as far as giving it away. But we'll still help you. We'll still help you. It was free. It was free. We didn't charge anything. God is able. He is able to make all grace abound towards you. He's able. So we're here. We're praying for you. We love you. Even in these times, if you can't come here in person, if you want to call, I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages on Facebook. We'll respond. So God bless you. We're praying for you. We believe God has good things for you.